The lantern light caught her face first, pale as moonlight and just as haunted. And Garrett Pierce knew, before he even stepped fully into the barn, that his carefully ordered life was about to become something else entirely. The November wind of 1874 howled through the gaps in the barn walls, carrying with it the bitter cold that swept down from the Sierra Nevada mountains into Placerville, California. Garrett had only come out to check on his horses before turning in for the night. But there she was, huddled in the corner of an empty stall, her thin dress offering about as much protection as a handkerchief against the freezing temperatures. Her dark hair hung in tangled waves around her shoulders, and her lips had taken on a bluish tint that made his stomach clench with worry. "Madam." His voice came out rougher than he intended, startled as he was. "You all right?" She looked up at him with eyes the color of winter sky, and he saw the fear flash across her face before she tried to shrink further into the corner. Her whole body trembled, though whether from cold or terror he could not tell. Garrett held up both hands, showing he meant no harm. "Easy now. I am not going to hurt you. I am Garrett Pierce. This is my property." He kept his voice low and steady, the same tone he used with spooked horses. "You are half frozen. How long have you been out here?" Her teeth chattered so hard she could barely speak. I did not mean. I am sorry. I will go." "Go where?" Garrett asked, taking a careful step closer. "It is the middle of the night and cold enough to freeze the tail off a brass monkey. You would not make it a quarter mile in that dress." He studied her more closely now, noting the tear in her sleeve, the dirt on her hands and face, the desperate exhaustion in every line of her body. Whatever had brought her here, it was not good. She tried to stand, using the wall for support, but her legs gave out beneath her. Garrett moved quickly, catching her before she hit the ground. She weighed next to nothing in his arms, all sharp angles and trembling limbs. "The house has room for you too," he said firmly, making the decision in that instant. "You need warmth and food, and then we can sort out the rest." "I cannot," she began, but another violent shiver cut off her protest. "Yes, you can and you will," Garrett said, already carrying her toward the barn door. "We can argue about it after you are not in danger of losing your fingers to frostbite." The walk from the barn to the house was short, but the wind fought him every step of the way. She did not struggle in his arms, which worried him more than if she had. Her body had gone nearly limp, her head resting against his chest as though she lacked the strength to hold it up. Inside the house, Garrett kicked the door shut behind them and carried her straight to the fireplace. He had banked the fire before heading out to the barn, and it still glowed with enough heat to warm the main room. He set her down in the old armchair his father had made, the one closest to the hearth, and immediately set about building up the flames. "What is your name?" he asked as he worked, adding logs and stirring the embers to life. "Delilah," she whispered. "Delilah Langford." "Well, Miss Langford, I am going to get you some blankets and something hot to drink. Do not you dare move from that chair." He did not wait for a response, heading to the bedroom and pulling every quilt and blanket he owned from the chest at the foot of his bed. When he returned, she was still sitting exactly where he had left her, staring at the growing fire with an expression he could not quite read. He wrapped the blankets around her, layering them until she looked like a cocoon of faded fabric. In the kitchen, he put water on to boil and rummaged through his supplies. He was not much of a cook, living alone as he did, but he had coffee and some dried herbs that his neighbor Mrs. Chen had given him. He made the strongest, hottest coffee he could manage and brought it back to her with shaking hands that had nothing to do with the cold. "Here," he said, pressing the tin cup into her trembling fingers. "Drink this slowly. It will warm you from the inside." Delilah wrapped both hands around the cup, holding it like it was the most precious thing in the world. She took a small sip, then another, her eyes closing briefly as the warmth spread through her. Garrett pulled up a wooden chair and sat down a respectful distance away, giving her space but staying close enough to help if she needed it. Now that they were in better light, he could see more details. She was younger than he had first thought, probably not more than 22 or 23. Her dress had once been nice, he thought, the kind a respectable woman would wear to church, but it had seen hard use recently. There were stains he did not want to examine too closely, and the hem was torn in several places. "You want to tell me what happened?" he asked gently. "Or would you rather rest first?" Delilah's hands tightened around the cup. "My husband," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "My late husband. He died 3 months ago. Fever took him." "I am sorry," Garrett said and meant it. She nodded, acknowledging his sympathy. "His brother." "William. He said I had to marry him, said it was proper that I needed a man to take care of me." Her voice grew harder. "I said no. I did not love William. I barely tolerated him when Thomas was alive, but William does not take no for an answer." Garrett felt his jaw tighten. He had known men like that, men who thought they could take whatever they wanted simply because they were stronger. "He hurt you," he tried, Delilah said, meeting his eyes for the first time with real steadiness in her gaze. "I fought. I got away, but he will be looking for me. He has friends, money, I have nothing." "You have shelter tonight," Garrett said firmly, "and tomorrow we will figure out the rest." "Why would you help me?" The question came out raw, confused. "You do not know me. I could be lying. I could be a thief or worse." Garrett considered this. "Could be," he agreed, "but I do not think so. And even if you were, nobody deserves to freeze to death in a barn." He stood up, suddenly feeling the need to move. "Look, Miss Langford, I am not a complicated man. I work my land, I take care of my animals, and I try to do right by people when I can. Tonight, doing right means making sure you do not die of cold or hunger. Tomorrow we can worry about the complications." Something in her face softened, just a fraction. "Thank you," she said simply. "You are welcome." Garrett rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly aware of the strangeness of the situation. Here he was, past midnight, with a woman he had never met before sitting in his house. "Are you hungry? I have some bread and cheese, maybe some dried beef. I do not want to be any more trouble." "It is not trouble. When did you last eat?" She had to think about it. "Yesterday morning, I think. Maybe the morning before, I am not sure." Garrett bit back a curse and headed back to the kitchen. He put together a plate of everything he could find that did not need cooking, slicing the bread thick and adding a generous portion of cheese. There was half an apple pie that Mrs. Chen had brought over 2 days ago, and he cut a large slice of that too. When he brought the food back, Delilah's eyes widened. "I cannot eat all that." "Eat what you can," he said. "The rest we'll keep for breakfast." She ate slowly at first, as though her stomach had forgotten what to do with food, but gradually she picked up speed. Garrett watched her from his chair, pretending to stare at the fire but keeping her in his peripheral vision. She was pretty, he realized, even exhausted and frightened and dirty from the road. There was something about the shape of her face, the curve of her mouth, that caught at him in a way he had not expected. He pushed the thought away firmly. The woman was running from a dangerous situation. The last thing she needed was him looking at her with anything other than simple human kindness. When she had eaten about half the food, Delilah set the plate aside and pulled the blankets tighter around herself. "I should tell you everything," she said. "You deserve to know what you are getting into by helping me. Only if you want to. I want you to understand." She took a deep breath. "I married Thomas Langford 2 years ago. We lived in Sacramento. He was a good man, truly good. He worked as a clerk, and we had a small house, nothing fancy, but it was ours. When the fever came, it took him in less than a week." Her voice wavered but held. His brother William came to the funeral. He had always been different from Thomas, harder, meaner. After everyone else left, he told me that I belonged to the family now, that I would marry him within the month. That is not how it works, Garrett said, anger stirring in his chest. A woman is not property to be passed around. Try telling William that. When I refused, he went to the bank. The house was in Thomas's name and William had connections. They evicted me, said I had no claim to it without a husband. Delilah's hands clenched in the blankets. William showed up that night and said he would be generous. He would marry me and give me a home, and all I had to do was be grateful and obedient. Let me guess, Garrett said dryly. You were not interested in being obedient. Despite everything, a tiny smile flickered across her face. No, I was not. I told him I would rather sleep in the street. So he grabbed me. The smile vanished. He said I was being childish, that he would teach me my place. We fought. I managed to break free and I ran. I grabbed what I could carry and I just ran. And you ended up here in Placerville. I got on the first stage I could afford. I used every penny I had left to get as far from Sacramento as possible. I arrived this afternoon, but I had nowhere to go. I tried asking at the hotel if they needed help, cleaning or cooking, anything, but they turned me away. Same with the saloon and the general store. She looked down at her hands. By the time the sun started setting, I was desperate. I saw your barn from the road. I thought maybe I could stay warm through the night, and in the morning I would think of something. Garrett was quiet for a moment, processing everything she had told him. It was a bad situation, no doubt about that. William Langford sounded like the kind of man who would not give up easily, especially if his pride had been wounded by her rejection. But looking at Delilah, at the determination under the exhaustion in her eyes, Garrett found himself making another decision that probably was not wise. You can stay here, he said. Delilah's head snapped up. What? You can stay here, he repeated. I've got the space. This house is bigger than I need. My parents built it planning for a large family, but after they passed, it has just been me. You can have the spare room. You can help around the place if it makes you feel better about it, but mainly you can stay until you figure out what you want to do next. I cannot ask you to do that. You are not asking. I am offering. Garrett leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Look, I know you do not know me from Adam, but I give you my word, Miss Langford, you will be safe here. I will not bother you or make demands on you. You will have a locked door between you and me every night, and if William Langford shows up looking for you, he will have to go through me first. Tears welled up in Delilah's eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. Why are you being so kind to me? Because somebody should be, Garrett said simply, and because my mother raised me better than to turn away someone in need. He stood up, suddenly feeling awkward. But that is enough heavy talk for tonight. You are exhausted. Let me show you the spare room. He picked up one of the lamps and led her down the short hallway. The house had 3 bedrooms. His was at the front, looking out over the road. His parents' old room was at the back, and in between was the room that had been meant for children who never came. He had been storing extra furniture in it, but it was clean enough. It is not much, he said, pushing open the door, but the mattress is good and you will be warm. The room was indeed small, with just a bed, a dresser, and a washstand. But it had a window with real glass, curtains his mother had sewn, and a patchwork quilt that had been in the family for years. Delilah walked in slowly, touching the quilt with gentle fingers. It is perfect, she said softly. There is a lock on the inside of the door, Garrett pointed out, making sure she saw it. Use it. I will not be offended, she nodded, still looking around the room as though she could not quite believe it was real. I will get you some water for washing up, Garrett said. And tomorrow I will see about finding you some proper clothes. That dress has seen better days. I do not have any money to pay you back. Did I ask for money? Garrett shook his head. Just worry about getting some rest, Miss Langford. Everything else can wait for daylight. He brought her a pitcher of water and a clean towel, showed her where the outhouse was in case she needed it during the night, and then retreated to his own room. As he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Garrett wondered what exactly he had gotten himself into. He was 26 years old, had been running this ranch alone for 3 years since his father's death, and had gotten used to the solitude. Now he had a woman sleeping down the hall, a woman running from danger, a woman with sad eyes and a backbone of steel. It should have worried him more than it did. Morning came cold and bright, the sun turning the frost on the windows into patterns of light. Garrett woke early out of habit and lay still for a moment, remembering the events of the previous night. Part of him wondered if he had dreamed the whole thing, but then he heard soft footsteps in the hallway and the quiet clink of the water pitcher being moved. He dressed quickly in his work clothes, thick denim pants and a flannel shirt, and made his way to the kitchen. Delilah was already there, standing by the stove with a slightly lost expression on her face. "Morning," Garrett said, keeping his voice low and easy. "How did you sleep?" She turned to face him, and he saw that she looked a little better. The color had returned to her face, and though her dress was still a mess, she had clearly made an attempt to tidy herself up. "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. "I kept waking up expecting to hear William breaking down the door, but it was just quiet." "Good." Garrett moved past her to the stove, setting about making coffee. "Are you hungry? I usually just make eggs and bacon for breakfast. Nothing fancy, but it sticks to your ribs. Can I help? You are a guest." "A guest who does not want to feel useless," Delilah said firmly. "Please. Let me do something." Garrett considered this, then nodded. "All right. You can handle the eggs if you want. I will deal with the bacon." They worked together in companionable silence, moving around each other in the small kitchen. Garrett found himself noticing little things about her. The way she hummed quietly under her breath as she worked. How her hands moved with practiced efficiency despite her exhaustion. The fact that she kept glancing at him as though she expected him to suddenly turn mean. Breakfast was simple but good, and they ate at the small table by the window. Outside, Garrett could see his horses moving around in the paddock, their breath steaming in the cold air. "So what do you do here?" Delilah asked, following his gaze. "Besides rescue half-frozen women from your barn." Garrett smiled slightly. "I raise horses, mostly. Buy them young or wild, train them, sell them to folks who need good working animals. I've got a small herd of cattle, too, and I do some farming when the land cooperates. It keeps me busy." "It sounds like hard work." "It is, but it is my work. My father built this place from nothing, and I aim to keep it going." He took a sip of coffee. "What about you? What did you do before?" "Before my life fell apart," Delilah finished. "I kept house mostly. Thomas wanted me to focus on making our home nice. But before I married, I worked as a seamstress. I am good with a needle." An idea sparked in Garrett's mind. "Mrs. Chen at the next property over, she does alterations and sewing for folks in town. Maybe she could use an extra pair of hands, or at least give you some work to earn a bit of money." "You have already done so much, and I will keep doing it until you are back on your feet," Garrett said firmly. "That is just how it is going to be, Miss Langford, so you might as well stop arguing." She looked at him for a long moment, something complicated moving behind her eyes. "Call me Delilah," she said finally. "If I am going to be staying here, Miss Langford seems too formal." "Delilah," Garrett repeated, liking the way her name felt in his mouth. "And you can call me Garrett. No need for Mr. Pierce." After breakfast, Garrett showed Delilah around the property properly. The ranch was not huge, but it was well maintained. Besides the main house and barn, there was a chicken coop, a small stable, and a workshop where Garrett did repairs on his equipment. He introduced her to his horses, 4 beauties that he was currently training for sale, and pointed out the boundaries of his land. "It is not much," he said as they stood on the small rise behind the house, looking out over the property. "But it is mine." "It is beautiful," Delilah said, and she sounded like she meant it. "You must be very proud." "I am," Garrett admitted. He glanced at her, taking in the way the morning sun caught in her dark hair. "Listen, about clothes. I was thinking I could ride into town, talk to Mrs. Chen. She is about your size. Maybe she has something you could borrow until we can get you properly sorted out. I hate being such a burden." "You are not a burden," Garrett said, more sharply than he intended. He softened his tone. "You are someone who needed help. That is not the same thing. Besides, I have been alone out here for 3 years. It is actually kind of nice having someone to talk to who is not a horse." That got a real smile out of her, and Garrett felt something warm unfold in his chest at the sight of it. He rode into town that afternoon, leaving Delilah at the house with strict instructions to keep the doors locked. Mrs. Chen was a tiny Chinese woman in her 50s who had come to California during the gold rush with her husband. When he died in a mining accident, she had stayed and made a life for herself through sheer force of will and exceptional skill with a needle. She lived alone on the property next to Garrett's and had been a good neighbor since his parents' time. "Garrett Pierce," she said when she opened her door, her accent still thick after all these years. "What brings you to my door? Is something wrong?" "Not wrong exactly," Garrett said, suddenly feeling foolish. How did he explain this? "I have a situation, Mrs. Chen. I could use your help." She listened to his carefully edited story, her dark eyes sharp and knowing. When he finished, she nodded slowly. "This woman, she is in trouble." "Yes, madam." "And you want to help her?" "Yes, madam." "Does she have a husband, widowed?" "And you have feelings for her?" It was not a question. Garrett felt heat rise in his face. "I just met her last night." "That is not an answer." Mrs. Chen smiled slightly. "But it is answer enough. Come, I have clothes that will fit her, and I could use help with sewing if she is skilled. Winter is when everyone wants new curtains and mended coats." She gathered up an armful of dresses, practical work clothes in sturdy fabrics, and pressed them into Garrett's arms. "You are a good man, Garrett Pierce, like your father, but be careful. If this woman is running from a bad man, he might come looking." "I know," Garrett said. "I will handle it if he does." Mrs. Chen gave him a long look. "Yes, I think you will. Bring her by tomorrow. I will talk to her about work." When Garrett returned to the ranch, he found Delilah in the kitchen. She had cleaned the place from top to bottom, and something smelled wonderful on the stove. "I hope you do not mind," she said quickly, seeing his expression. "I found some vegetables in your cellar and some dried herbs, and I thought I would make stew. I needed to do something, or I was going to go mad just sitting around. Mind, I have not had a home-cooked meal that I did not make myself in years." Garrett set down the bundle of clothes. "Mrs. Chen sent these for you. And she said she would be happy to have you help with sewing work if you are interested." Delilah's face lit up in a way that made Garrett's heart skip. "Really? Oh, that would be wonderful. I need to be doing something useful. You are welcome to look through these now if you want. I will go tend to the horses and give you some privacy." He took his time with the evening chores, feeding and watering the animals, checking the fences, doing all the small tasks that kept a ranch running. When he came back inside, Delilah had changed into one of Mrs. Chen's dresses, a simple brown calico that fit her much better than her torn traveling dress. She had pulled her hair back into a neat bun, and she looked more like herself somehow, more settled. "That stew smells incredible," Garrett said, hanging his coat by the door. It is almost ready. I hope you are hungry." They fell into an easy routine over dinner, talking about small things, nothing too heavy. Delilah told him about growing up in San Francisco, about her father who had been a carpenter and her mother who took in laundry. Garrett shared stories about his parents, about learning to train horses from his father, about his mother's terrible singing voice that she insisted on using anyway. It was comfortable in a way Garrett had not expected. He had grown used to silence, to his own company, but having Delilah there felt natural somehow, like she had always been meant to be sitting across from him at this table. After dinner, they sat by the fire again. Delilah had brought some mending she had found, one of Garrett's shirts that had lost a button, and her fingers moved deftly as she worked. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a while. "Sure." "Why are you not married? A man with property like this, I would think women would be lining up." Garrett laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "There was someone," he admitted. "About 4 years ago, Sarah Whitmore. Her father owned the bank in town. We courted for almost a year, and I thought we were heading toward marriage. Then my father died, and I inherited this place." Turned out Sarah had no interest in being a rancher's wife. She wanted a husband who wore a suit to work, who had clean hands and a future in business. She married a lawyer from Sacramento 6 months later. "I am sorry," Delilah said softly. "It is all right." Better to find out before the wedding than after. Garrett leaned back in his chair. "After that, I focused on the ranch. I figured if the right woman came along, she would, and if she did not, well, I had the horses. Horses are less complicated than people." "Exactly." He looked over at her. "What about you? Did you love Thomas?" Delilah's hand stilled on the mending. "I did," she said slowly. "Not the wild, passionate kind of love you read about in novels, but he was kind to me and he made me laugh and I was content. I thought that was enough, and maybe it was. We were happy in our way. That is more than a lot of people get." "Yes," she resumed her sewing. "I think that is why William made me so angry. He expected me to just transfer my affections like Thomas was interchangeable. But people are not interchangeable. Love does not work that way." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the crackling of the fire and the wind outside. Garrett found himself watching her, the way the firelight played across her face, the concentration in her expression as she worked. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. There was a strength in her, a resilience that called to something in him. He pushed the thought away. It was too soon, too complicated. She had just escaped from one dangerous situation. The last thing she needed was him developing feelings for her. But as the evening wore on and they talked about everything and nothing, Garrett had the sinking suspicion that it was already too late for that. The days began to develop a rhythm. Garrett would wake early and do the morning chores, often finding Delilah already up and making breakfast. She would clean the house and help Mrs. Chen with sewing work in the afternoons while Garrett worked with the horses. Evenings they spent together, sometimes talking, sometimes sitting in companionable silence. A week passed, then 2. November gave way to December, and the cold deepened. Garrett made a trip into town for supplies and heard some gossip that made his blood run cold. A man had been asking around about a woman matching Delilah's description. He was well-dressed, well-spoken, and he claimed to be her brother-in-law looking for his missing sister. Garrett came home that evening with his jaw set and his mind racing. He found Delilah in the kitchen, humming as she made dinner, completely unaware of the danger creeping closer. "Delilah," he said, keeping his voice calm, "we need to talk." She must have heard something in his tone because she immediately set down her spoon and turned to face him. "What is wrong? William is looking for you. He has been in town, asking questions." All the color drained from her face. "How long has he been here?" I do not know. I heard about it from the storekeeper today. He came in yesterday, apparently, showed around a photograph, said he was worried about his sister-in-law. Garrett moved closer, instinctively wanting to comfort her. He has not been out here yet, but it is only a matter of time before someone tells him about the new woman staying at my place. Delilah wrapped her arms around herself. I should leave. I should go before he finds me here. I do not want to bring trouble to your door. No. The word came out sharper than Garrett intended. You are not going anywhere. This is where you are safe. But if he comes here, then I will deal with him. Garrett took her hands in his, feeling how cold they had gone. Listen to me, Delilah. I meant what I said that first night. You are under my protection. William Langford does not get to take you anywhere you do not want to go. I will not allow it. He is not a good man, Garrett, if you get in his way. I am not scared of him. And it was true. Garrett had faced down wild horses, angry cattle, and the harsh elements of this land. One entitled man from the city did not frighten him in the slightest. But we should be prepared. You know how to shoot, a little. My father taught me when I was young. Good. I am going to teach you more. And from now on, I want you to stay close to the house. No more walks up to Mrs. Chen's alone. If you need to go anywhere, I will take you. Delilah nodded, her fingers tightening around his. Thank you, she whispered. I do not know how I will ever repay you for all of this. You do not need to repay me, Garrett said. He realized they were standing very close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of gray in her blue eyes, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. I am doing this because I want to, because you matter to me. The words hung in the air between them, heavier with meaning than he had intended. Delilah's eyes widened slightly, searching his face. Garrett. She began, but he gently released her hands and stepped back. We should eat, he said, his voice rough. And then I will show you how to load and fire my rifle. They spent the evening after dinner on makeshift target practice. Garrett set up bottles on the fence posts and showed Delilah how to properly sight down the barrel, how to squeeze the trigger instead of jerking it, how to breathe and stay calm even when her heart was racing. She was a natural, better than he had expected. After a dozen shots, she was consistently hitting her targets. You have done this before, Garrett said, impressed. My father used to take me hunting rabbits, Delilah admitted. That was a long time ago, but I guess you do not forget. Good. Keep the rifle by your bed at night and keep it close during the day when I am outside. I do not think William will try anything stupid, but I would rather be prepared. That night, Garrett lay awake in his room, listening to the sounds of the house settling around him. He could hear Delilah moving around in her room, probably just as unable to sleep as he was. The knowledge that William Langford was somewhere nearby, hunting for her, made his protective instincts flare to life in a way that was almost painful. Somewhere along the way, Delilah had stopped being just a woman he was helping. She had become important to him, vital even. He looked forward to seeing her each morning, to hearing her thoughts on everything from the weather to philosophy. He loved the way she laughed, rare but genuine when it came. He admired her strength, the way she refused to be broken by what she had been through. He was falling for her, had probably been falling since that first night when he found her shivering in his barn, and it terrified him. 2 days later, William Langford came to the ranch. Garrett was working with one of the horses in the paddock when he saw the buggy coming up the road. Fine and expensive and completely out of place on this muddy frontier track. He immediately tensed, his hand moving instinctively to the gun belt he had started wearing again. Delilah, he called toward the house. Get inside and lock the door. She appeared in the doorway, saw the buggy, and went pale, but she did not argue, just disappeared back inside. Garrett heard the bolt slide home and felt marginally better. The buggy pulled to a stop in front of the house, and the man who climbed down matched the description Garrett had gotten in town perfectly. William Langford was tall and well-built, with the kind of groomed good looks that came from money and leisure time. He wore an expensive suit and carried himself with the confidence of a man who had never been denied anything he wanted. Garrett hated him on sight. "Can I help you?" Garrett asked, keeping his voice neutral as he walked over. "I hope so." William smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "I am looking for my sister-in-law, Delilah Langford. I heard in town that you might have taken in a woman matching her description." "I might have," Garrett said carefully. "Why are you looking for her?" "She is family. She has been through a terrible ordeal, losing my brother, and I am afraid the grief has affected her mind. She ran away from home, and I have been searching for her for weeks. I just want to make sure she is safe and cared for." Every word was smooth, reasonable, and Garrett did not believe a single one of them. He had heard this kind of talk before, the way abusers made themselves sound like the reasonable ones, the victims. "Well, Mr. Langford, if I did have a woman staying here and if that woman happened to be your sister-in-law, I would have to say she seems perfectly sane to me. And she definitely does not want to see you." William's smile tightened. "With all due respect, you do not know what you are talking about. Delilah is not well. She needs family, not some stranger filling her head with ideas." "Funny," Garrett said. "She told me a different story. She said you tried to force her into marriage after your brother died. She said you laid hands on her. She said she ran because she was afraid of you." All pretense of friendliness dropped from William's face. "She is a liar, then, a hysterical woman who does not know her own mind. Or you are a man who does not like being told no." Garrett crossed his arms. "Either way, she is staying here of her own free will, and she has made it clear she does not want to see you. So I am going to have to ask you to leave my property." "You are making a mistake," William said, his voice going cold. "I have lawyers, I have money, I have connections. You are just some nobody rancher. You cannot keep her from me." "I can try." Garrett met his gaze steadily. "And I will keep trying for as long as it takes. Delilah is under my protection. If you want to get to her, you are going to have to go through me first. Careful, Cowboy. You might be biting off more than you can chew." "I have chewed on tougher things than you," Garrett said flatly. "Now get off my land before I help you off." For a moment he thought William might actually try something. The man's hands clenched into fists and real hatred flashed across his face. But then he seemed to think better of it, perhaps realizing that Garrett had several inches on him and was armed besides. "This is not over," William said, climbing back into his buggy. "I will get her back. She belongs to my family." "She belongs to herself," Garrett shot back. "And she has chosen to stay here. Accept it and move on." William did not respond, just snapped the reins and sent his buggy lurching back down the road. Garrett watched until he was out of sight, his heart hammering in his chest with leftover adrenaline. When he turned back toward the house, Delilah was standing in the doorway. She had been watching the whole thing, her face white but her eyes fierce. "Are you all right?" Garrett asked, striding over to her. "I should be asking you that. You just made an enemy of a very dangerous man." "I have had worse enemies." Garrett reached out and gently touched her arm. "Are you all right?" Delilah nodded slowly. "I thought I would be more scared seeing him again, but I was just angry. Angry that he followed me here, that he will not leave me alone, that he thinks he has any right to me." She looked up at Garrett, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You stood up for me. Nobody has ever done that before." "Well, somebody should have," Garrett said gruffly. "You deserve better than men like him." She reached up and touched his face, her palm soft against his rough jaw. "Thank you," she whispered. Garrett covered her hand with his own, and for a long moment they just stood there, connected by that simple touch. He could feel the pull between them, the attraction that had been building for weeks. It would be so easy to lean down, to kiss her, to pull her close and tell her everything he was feeling. But she had been through too much. She deserved time to heal, to be sure of what she wanted without the pressure of his feelings clouding things. So instead, he squeezed her hand gently and stepped back. "Come on," he said. "Let us get back inside. I do not trust that William will not try to come back." That evening they were both on edge. Garrett checked the doors and windows multiple times, making sure everything was secure. Delilah tried to distract herself with sewing, but he could see her hands shaking. "He scared you," Garrett said quietly. "No." Delilah set down her mending. "I scared myself. When I saw him, for just a second, I felt like that helpless woman again, the one who ran instead of fighting. I hate that feeling." "Running was fighting," Garrett said firmly. "You saw a bad situation and you got yourself out of it. That takes strength, Delilah. Do not ever think it makes you weak." She looked at him with such open gratitude that his heart ached. "How did you get to be so wise?" "I am not wise. I am just stubborn. Ask anyone in town." He smiled slightly. "But I have learned a few things over the years, and one of them is that real strength is not about never being scared. It is about being scared and doing what you need to do anyway." "Is that what you were doing today?" "When you faced down William, I was not scared of him," Garrett said honestly. "But I was scared of losing you, of him taking you away before I had the chance to." He trailed off, realizing what he was about to say. "Before you had the chance to what?" Delilah asked softly. Garrett took a deep breath. This was not how he had planned to do this, had not planned to do it at all really. But the words were there, pushing to get out, and he was tired of holding them back. "Before I had the chance to tell you how I feel about you," he said. "I know it is too soon. I know you have been through hell and probably do not need me complicating things. But I care about you, Delilah. More than I should, probably. And when I saw William here, trying to take you away, I realized that I would fight the devil himself before I let that happen." Delilah was very still, her eyes fixed on his face. "Garrett, you do not have to say anything," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know. Whatever happens, whatever you decide, you should know that you have a place here for as long as you want it. Not because I expect anything from you, but because you matter to me." She stood up slowly, setting her sewing aside, and crossed the room to where he sat. Garrett's breath caught as she stopped in front of him, close enough that he had to tilt his head back to meet her eyes. "I care about you too," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I have been trying not to. I told myself it was too soon, that I was just grateful for your help, that I should not let myself feel anything so soon after losing Thomas. But the truth is, Garrett, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is seeing you. And when I go to bed at night, I lie awake wishing we had talked longer. You make me feel safe, yes, but also seen. Like I matter as a person, not just as someone to be taken care of or controlled." Garrett stood up, bringing them even closer together. "You do matter," he said roughly. "More than you know." "Then show me," Delilah whispered. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking along her cheekbones, giving her every chance to pull away. But she did not. Instead, she leaned into his touch, her eyes drifting closed. When Garrett kissed her, it was gentle at first, tentative, giving her control over the moment. But Delilah made a soft sound in the back of her throat and pressed closer, her hands fisting in his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something more. It was like coming home after a long journey, like finding something he had not even known he was missing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Garrett rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why did you wait so long?" Delilah asked, a hint of laughter in her voice. "I was trying to be noble, let you have time and space and all that." "Well, stop being noble. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "I have had enough time to know what I want, and I want this. I want you." Garrett kissed her again, slower this time, savoring the taste of her, the feel of her in his arms. She fit against him perfectly, like she had been made to be there. They spent the evening curled up together on the old couch, talking and kissing and making quiet plans for a future that suddenly seemed full of possibility. Garrett told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to expand the horse breeding operation, about maybe building a new barn in the spring. Delilah shared her thoughts about helping Mrs. Chen build up her sewing business, about maybe taking in piecework from the bigger towns, about creating something that was hers. "We could do it together," Garrett said. "Build something bigger than either of us could alone." "Is that a proposal?" Delilah teased. "Not yet," Garrett said seriously. "When I propose to you, and I will, it will be proper. But I am saying that I see a future with you, Delilah. A real one if you want it." "I want it," she said without hesitation. "I want you and this place and the life we could build together." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just holding each other, both marveling at how quickly things had changed. A month ago they had been strangers. Now they were something more, something that felt inevitable and right. "What about William?" Delilah asked eventually. "He is not going to give up." "Let him try," Garrett said grimly. "I meant what I said. He does not get to hurt you again. I know you will protect me, but I do not want you getting hurt because of me either." "Then we will protect each other," Garrett said simply. "That is what people do when they care about each other." Delilah nestled closer, her head resting over his heart. "I am not used to that, being part of a team. Thomas was good to me, but he always made the decisions. He thought he was protecting me by handling everything himself. But you treat me like an equal." "Because you are," Garrett said. "You are one of the strongest people I have ever met, Delilah. I would be a fool not to value that." As the fire burned low and the night deepened around them, they made their way to their separate rooms. But Garrett lay awake for a long time, thinking about the woman sleeping down the hall, about the love that was growing between them, about the future they might build together if they could just get past this one obstacle. William Langford was not going to make things easy. Garrett had seen the look in his eyes, the possessive fury of a man who believed he owned something that was being taken from him. Men like that were dangerous, unpredictable. They did not accept defeat gracefully. Garrett resolved to stay vigilant. He would keep Delilah safe, whatever it took. And if William came back looking for trouble, he would find it. But for tonight, everything was quiet. The wind rattled the windows and the house creaked as it settled, and somewhere down the hall, the woman Garrett loved was sleeping soundly under his roof. It was enough. The next few weeks passed in a strange combination of tension and joy. On one hand, Garrett and Delilah grew closer every day, their relationship deepening from friendship into something that felt permanent and real. On the other hand, the threat of William hung over them like a dark cloud. They heard through the town gossip that William had taken a room at the hotel and showed no signs of leaving Placerville. He was making inquiries, talking to lawyers, trying to find some legal way to force Delilah to return to him. So far, he had not succeeded. Without proof that she was mentally incompetent, and with her being of age and stating clearly that she did not want to go with him, there was little he could do legally. But legality had never been William's strong suit. Christmas came and went quietly. Mrs. Chen joined them for dinner, bringing dumplings and accepting Delilah fully as part of Garrett's household. The older woman smiled knowingly at the way Garrett and Delilah looked at each other, but she said nothing, just squeezed Delilah's hand and told her she was glad she had found happiness. It was New Year's Eve when everything came to a head. Garrett had gone into town for supplies. leaving Delilah at home with strict instructions to keep the doors locked and the rifle close. He had wanted her to come with him, but she insisted she needed to finish a rush order for Mrs. Chen, curtains for the new schoolhouse that needed to be done by January 2nd. He should have insisted harder. When Garrett came back, the front door was standing open, swinging in the cold wind. His heart stopped in his chest. Delilah. He jumped down from the wagon and ran toward the house, his hand already reaching for his gun. The main room was empty, but there were signs of a struggle. A chair was overturned, fabric scattered across the floor, and most telling of all, the rifle lay on the ground near the door, clearly dropped in a hurry. Terror, unlike anything Garrett had ever felt, coursed through him. William had taken her. Somehow, he had gotten past her defenses and taken her, and Garrett was going to kill him for it. He ran back outside, looking for any sign of which direction they had gone. Fresh tracks in the half-frozen mud led toward the road, 2 sets of footprints and the marks of a buggy. Garrett did not waste time saddling a horse. He grabbed his fastest mare, swung up bareback, and took off after them. The tracks were easy to follow at first, clear in the winter mud. They led toward town, but then veered off onto a smaller track that headed up into the foothills. Garrett pushed his horse faster, heedless of the rough terrain. All he could think about was Delilah, terrified and alone with a man who had already proven he would hurt her. He caught up with them about 3 miles from his ranch, near an abandoned mining claim that had been played out years ago. William's buggy was stopped at an odd angle, one wheel clearly damaged from the rough road. Garrett could hear voices, Delilah's rising in anger, William's low and threatening. He dismounted and approached quietly, using the winter scrub as cover. When he got close enough to see them, rage flooded through him so hot and fierce it nearly blinded him. William had Delilah by the arm, his grip tight enough to leave bruises. She was fighting him, trying to pull away, but he was bigger and stronger. Her face was marked with a bruise along her cheek, and her dress was torn. "You are coming with me," William was saying. "I have had enough of this nonsense. You are going to marry me, and you are going to be grateful about it, or I will make sure that cowboy of yours has an unfortunate accident." "I will never marry you," Delilah spat. "I would rather die. That can be arranged too." Garrett stepped out from cover, his gun drawn and pointed directly at William's chest. "Let her go," he said, his voice deadly calm. William spun around, keeping his grip on Delilah. "You. I should have known you would follow. I said let her go." Garrett took a step closer. "Do it now, or I swear to God I will put a bullet in you and not lose a minute of sleep over it. You would not dare. I am an important man, you would hang." "Maybe," Garrett agreed. "But you would still be dead. Now let go of her." For a moment, William hesitated. Then, moving faster than Garrett expected, he pulled Delilah in front of him like a shield and produced a small pistol from his coat. "Drop your gun," he ordered, pressing the barrel against Delilah's temple. "Drop it or I will kill her right here." Garrett's blood turned to ice. Delilah's eyes were wide with fear, but she shook her head slightly, as if telling him not to do it. "Come on, Langford," Garrett said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You do not want to do this. You shoot her, I shoot you. Nobody wins." "I win if I cannot have her, and neither can you," William said, and there was a manic edge to his voice that made Garrett's stomach drop. "She was supposed to be mine. Thomas promised. We had an arrangement, and then he died and she thought she could just walk away. Well, she cannot. She is mine." "I was never yours," Delilah said, her voice shaking but firm. "Thomas never promised any such thing. You are delusional, William. Let me go before you make this worse." "Worse? It cannot get worse. You have ruined everything. My reputation, my plans, everything." William's hand was shaking now, the gun wavering against Delilah's head. Everyone in Sacramento is laughing at me. Poor William Langford could not even control his own brother's widow. Well, if I cannot have you, nobody will. Everything seemed to happen at once. William's finger tightened on the trigger. Delilah threw her weight sideways, breaking his grip. Garrett fired. The shot echoed across the hills, startling birds into flight. William dropped his pistol and fell to his knees, clutching his shoulder where Garrett's bullet had struck him. Delilah scrambled away, and Garrett was there in an instant, pulling her into his arms, checking her over frantically. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you?" "I am all right," she gasped, clinging to him. "My face, but I am all right." Garrett held her close for a long moment, trying to get his racing heart under control. Then he turned his attention to William, who was still on the ground, moaning and bleeding. "You shot me," William gasped. "You actually shot me." "Be grateful I was aiming for your shoulder," Garrett said coldly. He picked up William's pistol and tucked it into his belt. "Delilah, can you ride?" "Yes." "Then get on my horse and ride to town. Get the sheriff and a doctor. I will stay here and make sure he does not try anything else stupid." "Garrett, I do not want to leave you alone with him." "I will be fine. He is not going anywhere with that shoulder." Garrett touched her face gently, careful of the bruise. "Go. The sooner we get the law involved, the sooner this is over." Delilah nodded and ran to where Garrett's horse was waiting. She mounted up smoothly despite her shaking hands and took off toward town at a gallop. Garrett turned back to William, who was still clutching his wounded shoulder. "You made a lot of mistakes today, Langford. But the biggest one was thinking you could hurt her and get away with it." "I loved her," William said through gritted teeth. "No, you did not. You wanted to own her. That is not the same thing." Garrett crouched down, making sure he was still out of reach. "Real love means caring about what the other person wants. It means respecting their choices, even when it hurts you. You never loved Delilah. You just could not stand the idea of her belonging to anyone but you." William did not respond, just glared at him with pure hatred in his eyes. It took almost an hour for Delilah to return with the sheriff, a grizzled man named Tom Henderson, who had been keeping the peace in Placerville for 15 years. The doctor came too, a young man named Franklin who immediately started tending to William's wound. "Well, Pierce," Sheriff Henderson said, surveying the scene. "You want to tell me what happened here?" Garrett told the whole story, starting with finding Delilah in his barn that first night and ending with William's attempted kidnapping and threat. Delilah corroborated everything, showing the sheriff her bruises and the torn dress. "And you shot him in self-defense," Henderson said. "Defense of another, technically," Garrett corrected. "He had a gun to her head and was threatening to kill her. I did what I had to do." Henderson nodded slowly. "From what I am hearing, this whole town has been wondering what to do about Mr. Langford here. He has been making a nuisance of himself, that is for sure." He turned to William. "You are under arrest for assault, kidnapping, and attempted murder. Soon as Doc Franklin gets you patched up, you are going to jail, and then you are going to stand trial." "This is ridiculous," William protested. "She is my family. I have a right to." "You do not have a right to force anyone to do anything," Henderson cut him off. "And you sure as hell do not have a right to threaten them with a gun. Now shut up before I add more charges." They loaded William into the back of a wagon and started the journey back to town. Garrett and Delilah followed more slowly on his horse, Delilah sitting in front of him, his arms around her. "It is over," she said softly. "It is really over." "It is," Garrett agreed. "He is going to jail, probably for a long time. And even after he gets out, if he ever comes near you again, I will make sure he regrets it." Delilah leaned back against his chest. "You saved my life today. You saved your own life. You threw yourself out of the way. I just made sure he could not try again. We saved each other then." She tilted her head back to look at him. "Just like we promised." Garrett kissed her forehead gently, just like we promised. The trial was short and decisive, with both Garrett and Delilah testifying to what happened, and with William's own previous behavior in town working against him. The jury found him guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and there was talk of additional charges being filed back in Sacramento for his illegal eviction of Delilah from her home. As the judge read the sentence, William's eyes found Delilah in the courtroom. But instead of the fear she once would have felt, she just looked back at him calmly, her hand firmly clasped in Garrett's. She had survived worse than William Langford. She had found a new life, a new love, and she was not going to let him take that away with fear or threats. When they walked out of the courthouse, the January sun was shining bright and cold. Delilah took a deep breath of the crisp air and smiled. "Free," she said. "I am actually free." "You always were," Garrett said, "but now it is official." They rode back to the ranch in the late afternoon, both of them quiet but content. The ordeal was over, and they could finally look toward the future without the shadow of the past hanging over them. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Garrett pulled out a small box from his pocket. Delilah's eyes widened. "I have been carrying this around for 2 weeks," Garrett admitted, "waiting for the right moment. I figured I should wait until after the trial, until everything was settled and you were truly free to make your own choices without any pressure." He opened the box, revealing a simple gold band with a small blue stone set in it. "It was my mother's. My father gave it to her when they got engaged. She wanted me to give it to the woman I loved." Tears sprang to Delilah's eyes. "Garrett, I know we have not known each other that long," he said, "but I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I love you, Delilah. I want to build a life with you, raise a family with you, grow old with you. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Delilah said without hesitation. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." Garrett slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, as though it had been waiting for her all along. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her, long and deep and full of promise. They were married in March, when the worst of the winter weather had passed, and the first wildflowers were starting to bloom in the foothills. It was a small ceremony, just Mrs. Chen and a few neighbors from town, held in the main room of the house that was now truly theirs. Delilah wore a dress she had made herself, simple but beautiful in cream-colored silk. Garrett wore his best suit, the one he saved for special occasions, and could not stop smiling. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Garrett kissed his bride with such tenderness that Mrs. Chen had to dab at her eyes with her handkerchief. The reception was simple but joyful. Mrs. Chen had made enough dumplings to feed an army, and someone had brought a fiddle, and they danced in the yard until the sun went down. Garrett held Delilah close as they swayed to the music, both of them aware that they were beginning something new, something precious. "Happy?" he asked her. "So happy I could burst," Delilah said, beaming up at him. "I never thought I could feel this way again. After Thomas, after everything with William, I thought maybe I was not meant for happiness, but you proved me wrong. We get to write our own story now," Garrett said. "No more running, no more fear. Just us in this life we are building together." "Just us," Delilah agreed and kissed him again. The first year of their marriage was everything they had hoped for and more. They worked side by side on the ranch, Delilah proving to be just as capable with the horses as Garrett had suspected. She had a natural way with the animals, gentle but firm, and they responded to her beautifully. Together, they built up the breeding operation, selling trained horses to ranchers and farmers throughout the region. Delilah's sewing business flourished too. Working with Mrs. Chen, she started taking orders from as far away as Sacramento, creating beautiful dresses and curtains that became known for their quality. She hired 2 local women to help with the work, providing them with steady income and creating something that was uniquely hers. But the best part was simply being together. Garrett loved coming in from a long day of work to find Delilah in the kitchen, singing to herself as she made dinner. He loved the way she curled up next to him by the fire in the evenings, reading aloud from whatever book had caught her interest. He loved waking up next to her every morning, her dark hair spread across the pillow, her face peaceful in sleep. Delilah felt the same way. She had never known marriage could be a partnership of equals, a joining of 2 people who genuinely liked each other as much as they loved each other. Garrett made her laugh every day, supported her ambitions, and never once made her feel like she was less than him simply because she was a woman. In June, Delilah realized she was pregnant. She told Garrett one evening after dinner, nervous about how he would react. They had talked about children, of course, but in abstract terms, something for the future. Now the future was here, and she was not sure if he was ready. She need not have worried. Garrett's face lit up like the sun. "A baby! We are having a baby." "We are," Delilah confirmed, laughing at his reaction. "Are you happy?" "Happy? I am over the moon." He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down again carefully. "Should I be doing that? Are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" "Garrett, I am pregnant, not made of glass," Delilah said, still laughing. "I am fine." But Garrett fussed over her anyway, insisting she rest more, that she not lift anything heavy, that she let him handle most of the ranch work. Delilah tolerated his hovering with good humor, knowing it came from a place of love. Mrs. Chen was thrilled by the news and immediately began sewing baby clothes in every color imaginable. "This child will be so loved," she said, pressing a tiny embroidered blanket into Delilah's hands. So very loved. The pregnancy was not easy. Delilah suffered from terrible morning sickness in the first few months, and as her belly grew, the aches and pains increased. But through it all, Garrett was there, rubbing her back when it hurt, holding her hair when she was sick, reading to her when she was too tired to do anything but rest. In February of 1876, almost exactly a year after William's trial, Delilah went into labor. It was a long and difficult birth, lasting nearly 20 hours. Garrett paced the hallway outside their bedroom where Mrs. Chen and the midwife were helping Delilah, feeling utterly useless and terrified. But when he finally heard the sharp wail of a newborn baby, all the fear melted away into pure joy. Mrs. Chen opened the door, beaming. "You have a son," she said. "A healthy, beautiful son, and Delilah is doing well." Garrett rushed into the room. Delilah was propped up in bed, exhausted but glowing, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in one of Mrs. Chen's blankets. She looked up as he entered, and her smile was radiant. "Meet your son," she said softly. Garrett approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was staring up at him with unfocused blue eyes. He was perfect. "Can I hold him?" Garrett asked. Delilah carefully transferred the baby into his arms. Garrett cradled his son with the same gentle care he used with newborn foals, supporting the tiny head, marveling at how light he was. "Hello there, little man," Garrett said softly. "I am your father, and I promise you I am going to do everything I can to give you a good life." The baby made a small sound, and Garrett felt his heart expand in his chest. This was his son. His and Delilah's. A living symbol of their love, of the life they had built together. They named him Gabriel Thomas Pierce, Gabriel for Garrett's father and Thomas in memory of Delilah's first husband. It felt right to honor both the men who had shaped their lives. Gabriel was a good baby, fussy at times but generally content. Garrett proved to be a natural father, patient and loving, changing diapers without complaint and walking the floor with Gabriel when he cried at night. Delilah watched him with their son and fell in love with him all over again. The ranch prospered as the years passed. They added more land, built a new barn, and became known throughout the region for producing the finest working horses in California. Delilah's sewing business continued to grow, and she eventually opened a small shop in town, employing 5 women and creating a place where women could work and earn their own money. Gabriel grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the horses as much as his parents did. By the time he was 4, he was already helping Garrett with simple chores, feeding the chickens and carrying water to the animals. In the spring of 1879, Delilah gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace Helen Pierce. Grace had her mother's dark hair and her father's gray eyes, and from the moment she was born, she had Gabriel wrapped around her tiny finger. He was a devoted big brother, always wanting to hold her, to show her things, to protect her. Garrett and Delilah stood one evening on the porch of their home, watching Gabriel teach Grace how to pet one of the gentler horses. The sun was setting over the Sierra Nevada mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Did you ever think we would end up here?" Delilah asked, leaning against Garrett's side. "That night when you found me in your barn, did you have any idea this was where we would be?" Garrett wrapped his arm around her. "I knew you were special," he admitted. "I knew from the first moment I saw you that you were going to change my life. I just did not know how much." He kissed the top of her head. "You made everything better, Delilah. The ranch, my life, everything. You and the kids, you are my whole world. And you are mine," Delilah said. "I was so lost that night, so scared and alone, I thought my life was over. But you showed me it was just beginning." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching their children play in the fading light. The house behind them was warm and welcoming, filled with laughter and love. The barn held horses they had trained together. The land stretched out around them, productive and beautiful, a testament to their hard work. It was not the life Delilah had imagined for herself when she married Thomas Langford all those years ago. It was better. It was real and hard and joyful, and everything she had never known she needed. "Do you ever think about William?" Garrett asked quietly. "Sometimes," Delilah admitted. "I heard he got out of prison last year, but I am not afraid of him anymore. He has no power over me. He never really did. I just needed to learn that. If he ever shows his face around here again." "He will not," Delilah said confidently. "He moved back to the East Coast last I heard. Started a new life somewhere where people do not know his history, and that is fine. I hope he found some kind of peace, but he is part of my past, not my present. You are my present and my future." Garrett pulled her closer. "Always," he promised. As the years continued to roll by, the Pierce family became a fixture in Placerville. Garrett served on the town council, working to improve roads and bring better schools to the area. Delilah became known as a fair employer and a kind friend, always ready to help a woman in need, remembering what it was like to have nowhere to turn. Gabriel grew into a fine young man, strong and honest like his father, with a gift for working with horses that surpassed even Garrett's. Grace developed her mother's artistic talents, creating beautiful embroidery designs that became sought after throughout California. In 1889, Gabriel married a local girl named Emma Richardson, a sweet woman who loved the ranch life as much as he did. They gave Garrett and Delilah their first grandchild the following year, a boy they named Garrett Jr. Grace married in 1892 to a surveyor named James Mills, and they settled in San Francisco, where he worked on mapping the growing city. She opened her own dress shop there, building on everything her mother had taught her. Through it all, through the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and challenges, Garrett and Delilah remained devoted to each other. They still sat by the fire in the evenings, talking about their day. They still danced in the kitchen when the mood struck them. They still looked at each other with the same love and wonder that had brought them together all those years ago. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Garrett took Delilah back to the barn where he had first found her. It had been renovated over the years, expanded and improved, but the stall where she had been huddled against the cold was still there. "I remember standing right here," Garrett said, holding her hand. "Seeing you for the first time, so scared and cold. I remember thinking that I had to help you, that I could not just walk away." "Best decision you ever made," Delilah teased. "The best decision we both made," Garrett corrected. "You could have run again. You could have refused my help, but you stayed. You trusted me. And together we built something incredible." Delilah looked around the barn, then out at the ranch beyond, at the life they had created. "We did we not? We really did." They walked back to the house hand in hand, just as the sun was setting. Inside, they could hear Gabriel and Emma's children playing, the house full of noise and life. It was chaotic and messy and absolutely perfect. That night, lying in bed with Garrett's arms around her, Delilah thought about the journey that had brought them here. About the scared woman who had stumbled into a barn seeking only shelter from the cold. About the kind cowboy who had offered her not just a warm place to sleep, but a home and a future. "I love you," she whispered into the darkness. "I love you too," Garrett murmured back, already half asleep. "Always have, always will." Delilah smiled and closed her eyes, feeling safe and cherished and exactly where she belonged. The years continued their steady march forward. Garrett and Delilah grew older, their hair turning silver, lines deepening around their eyes and mouths. But the love between them never dimmed. If anything, it grew stronger, tempered by time and shared experiences into something unbreakable. They celebrated their 25th anniversary with a big party. Gabriel and his family came from the ranch where they now lived and worked. Grace traveled from San Francisco with her husband and 3 children. Mrs. Chen was there too, now in her 80s but still sharp as a tack. Half the town turned out to celebrate the couple who had become such an integral part of the community. As Garrett and Delilah danced to music played by a local band, spinning slowly under the stars, someone raised a toast. "To Garrett and Delilah Pierce," called out Sheriff Henderson, now retired but still respected. "To a love that started in the most unlikely way and grew into something legendary. May we all be so lucky." Everyone cheered and drank, and Garrett pulled Delilah closer. "Legendary, huh?" he said with a smile. "I was just doing what felt right. And I was just trying to survive," Delilah said. "Funny how life works out." "Not funny," Garrett corrected gently. "Blessed. We have been blessed beyond measure." Delilah nodded, looking around at their children and grandchildren, at the friends who had become family, at the life they had built from nothing but hope and hard work. "Yes," she agreed, "we have." In the winter of 1901, Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 87. Garrett and Delilah were heartbroken, having lost not just a neighbor but a dear friend who had been there from almost the beginning. They buried her on a hill overlooking both their properties, marking her grave with a beautiful stone that Delilah had commissioned from San Francisco. "She would have loved this view," Delilah said as they stood at the grave site after the funeral. "She did love it," Garrett said. "She told me once that watching us build our life together gave her hope. That seeing real love made all the hard times worthwhile." They left flowers on her grave and walked back home, holding each other close against the cold. Gabriel took over more and more of the ranch operations as Garrett's joints began to protest the hard physical labor. Garrett did not mind, proud to see his son managing the place with such skill and dedication. He spent his days doing lighter work, training the more difficult horses, advising Gabriel on breeding decisions, and spending time with his grandchildren. Delilah had long since turned the day-to-day operations of her shop over to her employees, though she still designed new pieces and took on special commissions. She loved working with her hands, creating beauty from simple fabric and thread. But mostly, Garrett and Delilah enjoyed simply being together. They had earned their rest and they took it, sitting on the porch in the afternoons, watching the sun move across their land, remembering. "You have any regrets?" Delilah asked him one day in the spring of 1904. They were both in their 50s now, still healthy but feeling the weight of the years. Garrett thought about it seriously. "Not a single one," he said finally. "Everything that happened, even the hard parts, brought us here, brought us together. How could I regret that?" "I regret that Thomas had to die for us to meet," Delilah said softly. "I wish there had been another way." "I know," Garrett squeezed her hand. "But you cannot change the past. You can only make peace with it and move forward, and we have moved forward beautifully." "Yes," Delilah agreed, smiling at him. "We have." In the summer of 1909, Gabriel and Emma gave them their 5th grandchild, a little girl they named Delilah Pierce in honor of both grandmothers. Delilah cried when she heard the name, touched beyond words that her family would honor both her and Mrs. Chen in such a way. Holding baby Delilah in her arms, looking down at the tiny face so full of possibility, Delilah thought about the circle of life, about how everything connected. This baby, this new life, existed because a cowboy had shown kindness to a stranger one cold November night, because two people had chosen love even when it was complicated and difficult. "She is beautiful," Garrett said, looking over her shoulder at their newest grandchild. "They all are," Delilah said. "Every single one of them. We made this, Garrett, all of this. Our love created this entire beautiful family." "Best thing I ever did," Garrett said simply. As the sun set on that summer evening, 4 generations of family gathered in the house that Garrett's father had built, that Garrett and Delilah had filled with love. Children ran through the rooms, laughter echoed off the walls, and in the middle of it all, Garrett and Delilah sat together, watching it all with deep contentment. They had started with nothing but hope and determination. They had faced down danger and fear. They had worked hard and loved harder. And they had built something that would last far beyond their own lives, a legacy of love and family that would continue for generations to come. In the evenings, when everyone else had gone to bed, Garrett and Delilah would sit by the fire just like they had that very first night. Sometimes they talked, sharing memories and dreams. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, content in each other's presence. "You remember what you said to me that first night?" Delilah asked him one evening, "when you found me in the barn." "I said a lot of things," Garrett replied with a smile. "You said the house has room for you too," Delilah reminded him. "Such a simple thing, but it changed everything. You were not just offering me shelter, you were offering me a place in your life." "And you accepted," Garrett said. "Despite having every reason to be afraid, to mistrust, you took a chance on me." "Best chance I ever took." Delilah leaned her head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Garrett, for finding me, for keeping me, for loving me all these years." "Thank you for letting me," Garrett said, kissing the top of her head. "For choosing me, choosing this life. I know it was not always easy." "Nothing worth having ever is," Delilah said, "but it was always worth it. Every moment, every challenge, every joy. All of it was worth it because we faced it together." They sat in the firelight, two people who had found each other in the most unexpected way and built a love that would be remembered long after they were gone. Their story would be told by their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, about the cowboy who found a woman shivering in his barn and said the house has room for you too, about the woman who had the courage to accept that offer and build a new life. It was a story of survival and hope, of taking chances and choosing love even when it seemed impossible. It was a story of the American West, of hard work and determination, of people who built lives and families from nothing but will and love. But most of all, it was their story, Garrett and Delilah's, unique and beautiful and entirely their own. As the fire burned low and the night deepened around them, Garrett stood and offered Delilah his hand. "Come on, Mrs. Pierce," he said with the same gentle smile he had given her 1,000 times before. "Let us go to bed. Tomorrow is another day and I want to spend it with you." Delilah took his hand and let him help her up. "Tomorrow and all the days after," she said. "All the days after," Garrett agreed. They walked down the hallway to their bedroom, past the rooms where their children had grown up, past the photographs on the walls documenting their life together. It was a life well lived, full of love and family and purpose. In their bed, wrapped in each other's arms, they drifted off to sleep, secure in the knowledge that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The house that had room for her had become their home, filled with decades of memories and love. Outside, the California night was clear and cold, stars bright in the sky. The ranch was quiet, animals settled for the night, buildings secure. Everything was as it should be. Inside, Garrett and Delilah dreamed of the past and the future, of cold November nights and warm summer days, of struggle and triumph, of the incredible journey that had brought them together and kept them together through everything life had thrown at them. And when morning came, they would wake up side by side, ready to face another day together, just as they had for over 3 decades. They would have breakfast with whichever family members were visiting, would work on the ranch or in the shop, would steal moments alone to talk and laugh and simply be together. Because that was what they did. That was who they were. Two people who had found each other when they both needed saving, who had chosen each other again and again every day since, who had built something beautiful and lasting from nothing but love and determination. Their love story had started in a barn on a cold November night in 1874 with a simple offer of shelter. It had grown and evolved through years of joy and sorrow, triumph and challenge. And it would continue, woven into the fabric of their family, their community, their very land itself, a testament to what love could accomplish when given room to grow. The house had room for her, and she had filled it with love. And they lived happily, completely, beautifully together, their love a beacon for all who knew them, a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simplest act of kindness.